And so what I was able to do is I was able to talk to people, and I was able to be pretty fearless and really persistent. And I could show in the interview process, because of what I did study in college and like some of my experience, that I was able to pick up new ideas quickly and make connections between lots of different ideas.
From the cubicle to the lab, the studio to the war room, climbing the corporate ladder, or joining a scrappy startup, experience a day in the life of the jobs you want. This is the Experience a Diddle podcast.
We interview professionals, entrepreneurs, and recent grads to inspire you to gain experience beyond the classroom and launch a career of your own.
We're your hosts, Krista Bowe
and Matt Poe.
In this Experience episode of the Scalable Career series with sales and growth principal Monica Stewart, we're going to share the experience which made Monica into the queen of sales that she is today.
As a child, Monica wanted to be an archaeologist.
I used to have these little kits that you would buy that were like play excavation kits. So they came with like a little brush and little tools, and then you would like uncover something in sand.
That's so cool.
So I wanted to do that when I was younger, but I just didn't even understand how someone would have become an archaeologist. I really could have used you guys when I was a kid. Yeah. I just had no clue. I didn't know anyone who was one. It seemed very far away. I would see things being discovered in the New York Times, and I felt like by the time I was old enough to do anything, they would have already discovered everything anyway. So what's the point? So when I went to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to know that I just knew that I didn't want to be in high school anymore. So I was like, well, okay, I can work somewhere for like minimum wage, or I can go to college. So I guess I have to go to college.
Right.
That was literally like the entire thinking process.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I knew that I thought I wanted to do something international, like maybe have a business in another country.
Nice.
Something like that. And so that's why I picked my school, because they had a really good international business program. I started college at an international university in San Diego.
Okay.
Called U.S. International University. I went there. They had 3 locations: San Diego, Mexico City, and Kenya. So then in my second year, I went to their Mexico City campus, which was awesome. But I ended up majoring in international relations, which is, it's like political science.
Are you happy with that major decision?
I am.
Okay. Cool.
I am. Yeah. I think, candidly, I don't really think it matters that much what you major in college. Unless you want to do something super specific. But even if you do, you're probably better off learning it outside of school, especially if you think about STEM careers. It's changing so fast. If you're not going to a super, super top tier university where you can get into research programs and, they're really attracting like top caliber faculty, what you learn in college is definitely going to be outdated by the time you graduate. So this is controversial advice. I don't, ask people about this. Don't just take it from me. But I really think that just picking a liberal arts track and sticking with it is probably the way to go. The way, like what you learn in college, I think is really just how to learn and how to manage your life, like how to be an adult, how to show up on time, how to complete things on schedule.
Some people are better at it than others.
I mean, that's really what I think college is mainly about. And so I think learn what you want to learn. There are so many amazing resources for learning now. There's like podcasts like this, there's Khan Academy, there's General Assembly, there's Coursera. You can just go find people that are doing the thing that you want to do and go hang out with them and learn together. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get it in college.
Monica transferred to Brooklyn College in New York City to finish up her bachelor's.
I interned at some nonprofits. When I moved to New York, I worked for a catering company in the city. I actually just wanted to move back to the States because I knew that I would have to have internships and I wanted to start working. And I just couldn't do that in Mexico. So, yeah.
So you're getting out of college, right? You're graduating. What's going through your head at that time leading up to graduation, right after graduation? Do you remember?
I need a job.
Were you like super stressed out about it, or were you?
No,
Just
I
kinda
wasn't.
chill?
Yeah. I was
Kind of let your experience like speak for itself, sort of thing.
Yeah, I knew that I would find one. When I graduated, I went to all of these recruiters and they were like, cool, great. So what you should do is you should pick the industry that you think that you want to work in. And then you should get a job as an executive assistant to the highest ranking person
That is what someone
you can
told
find.
me too.
Fuck that.
Monica did not take the recruiter's advice. Her first job was working as an audience director for Opal Financial Group. You're probably thinking what we were thinking.
What is an audience development director?
So Opal is a conference company.
Okay.
And the way that industry works, I mean, I'm sure you guys see all the time. There are like these industry conferences, and there are usually like a couple big companies that put on a lot of them throughout the year. And like real estate is a big one, finance is a big one, healthcare, pharmaceuticals. So the business model is that you get companies to sponsor these events. And then they do it because it's marketing. So that they want to get in front of your audience. And so that's the demand side, I guess you could say. And I was responsible for the supply side. So basically creating the product that people would pay us for. And in my case, it was a division within this conference company that one of the guys who founded the company had started, and it was for European institutional investors who cared a lot about alternative investments. So people who managed big institutional funds, corporate pension funds, state funds. Like in the US, we have Social Security. That's a pension fund. Or the California Public Employees Retirement System is a pension fund. So there's a group of people who manage that investment fund, and it's public money, but they invest it and try to grow it as much as they can. And those are generally like the largest piles of money in the world are institutional funds, and particularly public funds, particularly in Europe. Like if you think about the social systems that European countries have, where they pay for your healthcare, they pay for your school, they pay for all of your retirement benefits. Well, all of that money is managed in these institutional funds, and then it's paid out to the citizens. So that's why there's such large piles of money in like weird places like Norway, for example, or Sweden. So my job was to find all of these people, call them, and get them to come to our conferences. And ideally get them to actually participate. So to speak on a panel or to moderate a panel discussion. And then once I had been working there for a little while, I also worked with the guy who was the head of the division, the managing director, to actually create the conferences. So, and that was the really fun part. So figuring out like, now that I had kind of gotten to know these people, what do they care about? What would be really interesting to them? What would get them to come out to one of our events?
Right.
And then get them to be really involved so that we could bring in a lot of sponsorship money.
Monica didn't study finance or banking in college like probably most of her clients did, but still excelled at her job because of one exercise she mastered with all of her clients and still practices to this day. What would you say to students who want to get those jobs but didn't study business or finance in college, and like any advice you have on kind of brushing up on?
I mean, I would say like understand what it is that they really need. And if you can't do that, like if they need something that you really can't do, then maybe don't get that job, you know?
Like don't kid yourself sort of thing.
Super underwater. Right. I mean, unless I'm sure that there are circumstances in which you would want to do that, but I would say think about what they really need and then show how you can do that. So in this case, it really wasn't necessary that I didn't have to have a finance degree in order to do this job. Mm-hmm. What I needed to be able to do was talk to people and be credible, which actually meant that it was really better that I didn't really know anything about it, because no matter how much I knew, like even if I had a degree, I never would have known as much as them.
Right.
Right. They've been doing this for decades every day. Like they're really experts. And I think that was actually one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was the first conference that I did at that job. I asked my boss, like, I'm in Portugal. What do you want me to do? Like, what am I supposed to be doing here? Like, what's my objective at this conference? And he was like, oh, right. Just talk to everybody. And, and then we'll talk about who you think you had good connections with. But whatever you do, just don't try to impress anyone because you just can't, Right. They're decades older than you. They sit on these huge piles of like trillions of euros. They've been all over the world. They're super smart. You're like 22. So
Right.
just don't
worry about that.
Yeah. Just talk to people. And it was super good advice.
That's really good advice.
Yeah. And so what I was able to do is I was able to talk to people. And I was able to be pretty fearless and really persistent. And I could show in the interview process, because of what I did study in college and like some of my experience, that I was able to pick up new ideas quickly and make connections between lots of different ideas, which is basically what you learn in a political science or really like any liberal arts degree.
Definitely.
So I was like, cool. So you guys are doing this alternative investment hedge fund thing. Great. I'll just take your weird ideas and I'll figure out how to put them together.
Right.
Because that's what I've literally learned how to do for the last 4 years.
She did well and liked working with her clients, but she felt it was time for a change.
What made you leave?
It was very dramatic, actually.
Ooh, story time.
Yeah. So I worked there for 2 years-ish. Mm-hmm. And it was really great, but I just thought, I thought I wanted another job. Like it was my first job and I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm ready to go do something else now.
Right.
So I started, and I thought I wanted to work maybe for one of the companies that were my clients. I didn't really know anything about finance before I started that job. I learned a lot about it. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is kind of cool. Maybe I want to go work in this industry instead of working at a conference company that, supports the industry. So I got another job at this company, Globe Tax Services. And I told my boss that I was going to quit. And he was so upset. He was like, what? So he immediately goes into we were sitting across the street having lunch, goes upstairs, goes into the CEO's office, who was his college friend basically, and has this whole like long meeting with him. And he's like, if you can't pay Monica enough to stay here, then I can't do this job. I can't run this division without her. And they just had this whole like blowout thing. And so I'm just like sitting there at my desk. So I'm talking to Jared. Jared is like, this is bullshit. Jared goes upstairs. He goes into the CEO's office. I'm just sitting at my desk. And then I see Jared just walk out and go to the elevators and just leave. And I'm like, okay. So I'm still just kind of sitting there, like doing whatever I was doing. And then the CEO calls me into his office and he's like, yeah, so your boss just quit. So there's nothing for you to do. So like you can leave now.
Oh my God.
And I was like,
what were you thinking?
I was planning on working here for another 6 weeks.
Right.
I was like, I'll give them a lot of notice. I'd never quit a job before. I didn't know,
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, I know that I'm going to leave. So I'll give them a lot of notice.
Jared wasn't mad at you. He was more mad at the CEO, right? To not give you what you deserved or whatever at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure that there were a lot of other things that were leading up to that. But yeah, no, he wasn't mad at me. He was just, it was very emotional.
It must have felt good to have like your boss kind of stick up for you like that in such an intense like manner at that age, at your first job. That must have been nice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It was really nice, but it was, again, like very dramatic.
Super weird. Yeah.
Super weird.
At the same time.
And then I just had like 6 weeks where I just like didn't have a job, but I already had a job. I just didn't have anything to do.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I wasn't planning on this.
Wow.
She got a little vacation out of it.
I got a little vacation.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. That's so,
very unexpected.
That's so funny.
I think that's
That
one of
is
my
an
favorite
awesome
stories
story.
ever.
Literally.
I seriously think
That's
so.
like gold. I can't even believe that.
Yeah. So you never know.
From there, Monica kind of made a 180. She found a company called Globe Tax Services and joined as a business development manager.
In your job description on LinkedIn, you said that you set up their CRM. Was that the first time you ever worked with one?
Yeah. We bought the CRM that I had used at my previous company. Great CRM, doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, because it didn't work on Mac. I don't think that they really realized how many companies would start using Macs. Yeah. It's called Maximizer Enterprise, and I loved it. I just thought it was amazing. Weirdly, everyone uses Salesforce. I didn't use Salesforce at my first 2 jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now everyone uses Salesforce or HubSpot. So yeah, that company, I think they didn't have a CRM, or they had a very basic one. So we bought Maximizer, and then we had to get this consultant in to help set it up, because we had one managing director that used a Mac, and we needed to do a lot of customization, but I did the rest of the administration on it.
So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of having like a super automated, clean CRM?
Oh man. It's literally, I literally just had this conversation today. It's so like the magic, the dream of having a super clean automated CRM with workflows and automation rules that work and data that matches up, is the power of it is insane. The fact of the matter is that like no company has it really. Like basically I think a CRM is like a car. Like the moment that you drive it off the lot, it just starts going downhill from there. Like the first thing that you put in there is, it's already fucked up. Like,
That's so funny.
Because you have 6 or 7 different people all putting stuff in there.
And then
Their
you've
own
got
different
lead
ways.
sources, and you have like things coming in from your marketing automation tool. And there's some really good tools that exist that you can buy on the Salesforce App Exchange that can help you mitigate that, but you're not going to solve the problem with behavior. You just are not. Because who uses your CRM? Salespeople. They don't want to follow rules.
Yeah, that's so true.
Her next career move was a pivot into the art industry, working in business development and marketing at a company called 20 by 200. What made you take this job?
After I worked at Globe Tax, I realized that I didn't want to work in finance at all.
It's getting old.
Yeah. Well, and it was just a really different company, even from the ones that I had been working with before. They were very banking focused, very like almost like a outsourced back office processor for banks, which is super different from being on the, in finance, there's like the front of house and the back of house. The front of house is client facing, like the deal side, basically. It's like placing money, raising money. And then the back office is everything that makes all of that actually work. So settling transactions, payment systems, compliance, like everything that enables the flow of money in the world, right?
Right.
And I just didn't like the back of office. It was just not my vibe at all. Not my world. Tons of like very detailed, very granular, a lot of regulatory considerations,
Compliance and all that.
all about regulatory and compliance.
It's
Yeah.
like insurance. It's the worst.
Yeah, totally. And I got super into it. And then I was just like, no, I don't want to go further down this road. And also, the financial crisis happened and the industry changed a lot, and it just kind of wasn't, I just wasn't into it. So I thought I wanted to try something totally different. So I did, went and worked at 20 by 200, which was the first tech company that I worked at, actually.
Nice.
Really cool company. It was started by this woman that came from AOL, and she had a mission to make art accessible and affordable for everyone. It wasn't a super big company, so I worked on a lot of marketing stuff with the website, and then they also had a business development function where we did partnerships with companies like West Elm.
Cool.
To put our frames and prints in their stores, for example.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. And then how is this role and industry? Actually, you kind of went into it a little bit. How is it different from your previous job to now?
The 20 by 200?
Yes.
Well, it was the only company that I've ever worked at that was business to consumer.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what'd you learn from that?
Just really different. Like, I was so used to being in kind of like a one-to-one customer-facing role, and that just doesn't really exist at a B2C company. The closest that you get, I think, is business development or brand partnerships, which are becoming more and more important as brand marketing in general is becoming more of a thing. But it's just really different because you're not necessarily you're not signing a deal. Like, you're not negotiating a contract. You're just becoming friends, and then you're sharing resources. Nice. It's a really, really different vibe. I have a really good friend that does that now for her company. They're a beauty company, and it's just a much different type of relationship. I'd say it's equally intense and equally difficult. It's just in a different type of way. When you're doing sales, you're spending a lot of time trying to work towards a deal and close that deal. Then you close the deal, and then you kind of like hand it off, right? If you're doing business development or partnerships, you're really like developing a relationship over a very long period of time, and you never pass it off. You never let it go because that's your relationship. Awesome. And you want to keep like developing it and keep moving it forward and keep, getting like further into the partnership. So I think some people prefer that. Some people prefer to have a little bit more of like a defined process where they're like closing a deal, moving on.
The next move for Monica seemed to be what really kickstarted her career into high gear. She gained some wisdom and started getting into a groove. Eventually, she linked up with a recruiter and found a data company called Panjiva, now owned by S&P Global.
I was interviewing at a bunch of different companies, and I liked them immediately. They liked me immediately. I went to the interview. The recruiter called me literally as soon as I got out of the elevator, and they were like, they loved you. And I was like, I loved them. And they were like, they want to make you an offer. And I was like, great. Before I got to the corner, I had a job. It was awesome.
That's so cool.
And also had no idea what they did. It's a data company that gets shipping data, import and export data from different governments, and then packages it into this database and organizes it based on company information. So for example, when you go to Home Depot, everything that you see has been imported from another country, pretty much. And so when those shipments arrive in the United States, because it's crossing a border, they have to fill out a shipping label called a bill of lading. Exactly like if you ship something FedEx internationally, you have to fill out that form. Well, companies have to do the same thing, except at that level of cargo, basically, like anything over a certain size, and certainly anything that's shipped by ocean freight, it's all recorded by the government, and it's covered under the Freedom of Information Act. So they have to release that information, and it contains a lot of really useful information, like where the shipment was coming from, who it was going to, what it contained, what the weights are, what ports it went through, and then a lot of information about the products. So we got all that data from the US, and then eventually also from Mexico, China, I think India, like all of Central America, a bunch of other South American countries, and had a really, really, really smart engineering team that put it all together on the back end and harmonized the data around single objects. So anytime that we saw Home Depot, for example, we could associate it with the Home Depot profile. And then you could go to our website and you could pull up Home Depot's profile and you could see everything that they had imported, who all of their suppliers were, what they bought from them, in what quantities, over time, where they were getting shipments from, what their supply chain looked like where everyone was located, how they were moving things around the globe. And there's a ton of information that you can get from that.
Nice. So who's coming to Panjiva for that information?
Home Depot.
Home Depot.
Home Depot, all of their competitors, the shipping companies that want to sell to Home Depot,
Nice.
suppliers that want to sell to Home Depot. So that was like our
That's so
core
cool.
market when I started. So when I initially started, we had 4 salespeople and we all had the same job, which was like, go make money. So here's your monthly quota, go get it. So you could do, we had a ton of inbound leads. You could call almost any company that you wanted because we didn't have that many customers yet. You could sell monthly plans, annual plans. You could upgrade people. You could just do whatever you wanted. But on the team, like, people very quickly started to go their own specific ways. So like the way that I went, it's like I just wanted to sell the biggest deals that I could. And then my friend who sat right across from me, she didn't really want to deal with any of that. Like, she literally just wanted to bring in revenue. She did not ever want to do a demo. She really didn't even want to talk about the product. I don't even know if she knew what we did for like the first 2 years. Like, I thought she did, but then sometimes she would ask questions and I would just be like, what?
That's hilarious.
Have you been here this whole time? So she ended up building our inbound sales team, which was hugely successful. And then I built our enterprise sales business.
She was promoted to Enterprise Solutions Manager. There, she was tasked with growing and developing the new enterprise side of the business, as well as managing SDRs, or also known as Sales Development Reps.
When we say enterprise, we mean big companies with more than 100 employees.
When we went through kind of like a big growth phase, we hired a bunch of salespeople. And then this is a very typical thing that you see now, especially in tech companies, but it's moving to other companies too, which is this idea that you shouldn't have your salespeople do everything, right? Like, they're probably really good at certain things. And so you should make it so that they can spend as much of their time doing those things. And then the things that someone else could do, get someone else to do that and pay them less money, right? So that's kind of the idea behind SDRs. And then there's also a lot of really valid points that you can make around task switching and the idea that you should have as much as possible someone doing just one type of work that requires one type of thinking in their day and not make them do 5 different work streams or thought streams because it will make them exponentially less productive. So we hired a bunch of basically junior salespeople, and the job of the SDR is just to develop leads and set up meetings for salespeople. And then the salespeople, all they do is run those meetings and then close the deal.
Nice.
So when we started our SDR program, I became in charge of the SDRs, training the SDRs, managing the SDRs.
So the SDRs was like entry level, so like fresh out of college sort of people?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So when you were promoted to Enterprise Solutions Manager, was that was managing that team, or was that a different promotion, different job function?
Different function. Yeah.
So what was that transition like? Was it night and day? Was it?
Oh yeah, it was really different. So along the way, with the SDRs at one point we had like, I don't know how many we had, but I think we had like 30 people on the team overall, right? Wow. So we had like, for a while we had a 1-to-1 ratio, then we had more account executives, then we had more SDRs, but I mean, at any time, like maybe like 15 people I was in charge of. And then that was building one part of our business where we were selling deals that were on average $4,000 to $10,000 a year. And fairly high volume. So not like a super transactional sale, but you'd want to close a deal in like about 2 to 6 weeks, ideally. And that was very much based on like matching information between buyers and suppliers. So like, hey, you sell textiles? Cool. Do you want to find all the companies in the US that you could potentially market your textiles to and contact them? Great. Do you want to see all of your competitors that are also selling textiles out of Pakistan and figure out who their customers are? Cool. We can do that. Are you a logistics company that just wants to find a bunch of leads in New Jersey? Great. Here it's $6,000, something like that. And what I realized is that there were a lot of companies that were using our product that we weren't paying any attention to at all, but they still were coming to us. And like everything about the product was not designed for them. And we weren't marketing to them. Nobody, like they were just coming to the website and signing up on their own. And these were companies.
And was this something that you kind of like realized over time and you brought up that point and nice.
Yeah. And I knew about it because I had worked in finance.
Right.
So I knew what these companies were. They were like hedge funds. Some of them were small banks. Some of them were private equity firms. Financial data companies like S&P or Cap IQ were coming to our site and they were just signing up for like these really tiny plans. And I was like, this is weird because these companies have way more capital than the ones that we're selling to. I mean, for us at the time, like a really big client would have been Pacific Feather, which is one of the largest manufacturers of pillows and comforters in the US.
All right.
It's all like the biggest companies that you've never heard of, companies that make ball bearings and die cast parts and stuff like that. Really interesting companies and they make a lot of money, but they, you know, they have a ton of expenses. And so if you look at their actual expendable capital, it's not as much. If you take a hedge fund that has approximately the same, if not more assets under management, and they literally have a staff of 20, you're like, well, these people have money to spend, you know? And they weren't spending a lot of money with us at all. In fact, they were spending the least amount of money with us. And so I thought that there had to be something there. And so I just started talking to them and figuring out what it was that they were trying to do with our product and with our data. And they told me all the things about it that didn't work for them and why they were interested and why they couldn't really get this information anywhere else. And we ended up building a business around it and building a product for them because the things that we needed to do for them made our data better for all of our customers, which enabled us to get much, much, much bigger contracts with large logistics companies and with big like Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. We were able to get into totally different parts of those organizations, whereas before we would have just been selling to, let's say, a sourcing manager that's responsible for buying lawn tools. Those companies have huge business intelligence teams and compliance teams and internal supply chain teams that spend a lot of money on consultants and spend a lot of money on data. And we were able to get into those parts of the organization as well, which we had never been able to access before because they viewed us as a lower value product.
Interesting.
Ooh.
That's so awesome.
So you carved out your own position there, your own promotion in a sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I basically made the case that we needed to be in this business.
Gotcha.
So
that's a big pivot that you, or big chain of events that you started, I guess. You should be proud of that. I would be.
Yeah, it was so gratifying when the company got acquired by S&P because that definitely would not have happened if we had not decided to make that pivot and go into that business.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
All right, cool. So you were there for a little over 5 years. What made you leave?
Well, I was there for 5 years, you know, it was kind of like,
time.
yeah. And it was sort of like, okay, you know, I've done what I wanted to do. I'd finished this huge project, like built this team, built this business. It was going really well. We had some really big wins. And it was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to probably stay here now for like 10 years. And then this is going to be like a big chunk of my career, or this is a time when I could now go and do something else. And so I decided to go and do something else. And it was also, I mean, it was also like, it was exhausting, really. Like I had to learn, I was selling to quant analysts at hedge funds. And like I was doing a lot of data science on my own, which is not something that I am trained to do or, you know, really like ever learned how to do. So it was really intense.
Monica's work was done and it was time to work her magic elsewhere. Her next move was working at Trello in the strategic sales wing.
What attracted you to that job? Can you tell us about how that came about?
Well, I was using the product.
Okay.
I was using the product on my team at Panjiva. So, and I think that's how they get a lot of people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, I love Trello. Like everyone immediately just has this, if you use it at all, you have this like warm, fuzzy feeling as soon as you hear about the company because it's such a great product. So, they were building their enterprise team and I was kind of like, oh, great. Like I just did this. And I thought that I kind of talked myself into it because I realized really quickly that they can literally sell to anybody. And then when I looked at Trello's business, I was like, oh, that's so cool. They're not confined to just companies that make physical things. I mean, it's just random salespeople logic, basically. But I also I really believed in the product. I really liked the culture, very different from the culture of Panjiva. And yeah, it seemed like something that I would want to do for a little while.
Nice.
Cool. You were there for about a year?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay, cool.
Yep. And then from a sales perspective, I mean, the growth and the value of Trello never came from the sales team, which was ultimately the reason that I didn't end up staying there because like I want to be in a business where what I'm contributing to the business is like very
the bread and butter.
Salient. Yeah. It's a very different vibe. If I were in marketing or in product, I mean, I think the product team at Trello is incredible, like super talented, very like thinks very deeply, has like a very, very, very well-defined, clear product vision that they stick to and have adhered to even as product has continued to grow and develop. And I think that's why so many people appreciate and their users grew so fast. It really, I mean, they say like it sells itself. It doesn't sell itself.
Right.
It won't generate money on its own, but you don't need to convince anyone to use it.
Monica then brought her talents to Scaled, the company she works for now. She was working as a consultant with a real estate tech startup that needed help putting processes and structures in place.
I liked the team at Red IQ. I don't know that much about institutional real estate. Learned a lot about institutional real estate, but I was like, yeah, this is totally in my wheelhouse. Like, this is a team that needs to grow. They need structure. The CEO needs structure. Cool, I can do this. But I don't think that I never really thought that it was going to be like a super long-term thing, but I was like, oh, I can do a lot here, you know, in like a pretty short period of time. And then the company got acquired 6 weeks after I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Which changed a lot, which was crazy because Trello had just gotten acquired like right before I started. So I was like, I literally cannot. And then Panjiva got acquired like a year later in a year. The last three companies that I worked for.
You're the common denominator there.
I know. So no, that's actually, it's an amazing point. And so that's why, you know, I thought like the next company that I join, I want to feel like it's my company because the previous three companies were companies that I put a lot into, but I never really felt like they were mine.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so I was just, I saw that and I was like, wow, like, yeah, I am the common denominator.
Yeah.
I should not waste this gift.
Definitely. After Red IQ, she went back to Scaled and has been there ever since as principal. We'll get more into what being a principal at a company like Scaled actually entails in the Adiddle episode. A little background on Scaled: it was founded a little over 5 years ago by the CEO, Jake Dunlap. Before Scaled, he was a VP at sales at a bunch of different tech companies and realized the intensity and job uncertainty wasn't for him anymore.
The average tenure right now for sales leaders is about 18 months. And it's really risky. Everything that happens in the company is your fault. If you're really good at what you do and the company is growing, they're probably going to hire someone more senior than you and layer over you. If it's not going well, you're probably going to get fired. So either way, it's really tough. And I think especially these days, your odds of, grabbing that unicorn and like finding the company that's actually going to pay out and actually having options that are worth something when any kind of liquidity event happens is just really, really low. So you'll make a good amount of money, but you're going to have a super stressful job and you're going to have a new job every 2 years. And he was just sort of looking at his life and his life path. And he was like, I just don't want to do that. So he started doing consulting, and realized that there was a real need for companies to level up a lot of different parts of their sales organization, but maybe they weren't ready to hire someone, or they had a great team in place, but they just needed help. And he's really good at what he does. So he started doing that. And that was 5 years ago. And we've just kind of continued to grow and take on more clients and bring on more consultants.
Awesome.
And here we are.
Scaled's client base has grown from mostly tech companies to now clients in all different industries. The companies they partner with usually have about $50 million in revenue, 200 employees, and at least 20 people on their sales team.
And it's certainly changed a lot. You know, I think early on it was kind of like, cool, you want to do some stuff with sales? We do things with sales. We can help you with that. And like any business, you figure out what your product market fit is eventually, and you figure out who your target buyers are. Same exercises that we take our clients through. Early on, most of our clients were in tech, lots of, venture-backed B2B SaaS companies. And right now, 3 of our 5 biggest clients are not tech companies at all.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Really interesting.
Why do you think that is?
They need so much.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting.
Like if you think about people that work at startups, they're generally, they're younger. They've been through a couple companies before. So they've at least seen how things can break down, and they've learned. There's much more of a culture of learning. People are much more involved, and they tend to be newer companies. So you get to sort of start fresh and try new things. If you look at an industry like real estate or logistics, or even older technology companies that aren't necessarily SaaS, it's a really old school culture. And so it's a really old school sales process. And so the things that we talk to our clients about a lot, like leveraging technology, putting together a repeatable process, defining their buyer personas, testing messaging across the sales team. They're just like, what?
Right.
Like,
Oh my God.
we're all supposed to do it the same way. So we can get a lot of lift with those companies, and they're under less pressure in a lot of ways because their funding structure is sometimes different. So they have a little bit more latitude. I don't know if that's actually the reason. I think it's actually just because they're starting to realize, like a lot of companies in older industries, that they can gain a lot by learning some new tricks.
What's next then, you think?
Well, I'm really happy at Scaled. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. It's a super cool business. It's so much fun to be able to work on a business where your business is working on other people's businesses.
Definitely. It
Yeah.
must be rewarding.
Get to see everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Must be cool.
Yeah. They're good and the bad.
No matter the industry, Monica has proved to be a powerhouse with a work ethic that makes straight money moves. We covered a lot so far in the Scalable Sales Career Series. Next, join us for part 3 to recap and discuss what we learned.
Do you need experience? Are you looking for an internship? Well, you can join the team and interview anyone in any industry by becoming an Experience-a-Diddle student interviewer. Regardless of your major or amount of experience, this is the perfect stepping stone into any internship or career. Apply to the Adiddle Army at experienceadiddle.com/students. That's experienceaditl.com/students. Thanks for listening. To find the show notes with all relevant links and photos for this series, head over to experienceadiddle.com. That's experienceaditl.com.
If you learned something in this episode, please take some time to help our mission by leaving a positive rating and review of the show. Each week, we bring you a new interview series with guests from different jobs and industries. In every series, we live a specific day in the life, hour by hour, experience the career journey, and have a discussion about what we learned. So, don't forget to subscribe.